Hello, hello, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Kylie and I had VSG or gastric sleeve surgery on the 22nd of October in 2022. I had this because I have struggled with my weight due to thyroid disease for 30 years and recently finding out I had lipedema. But after reading lots of studies, I decided that this might be my next course of action. So this video is all about my journey down to Perth. I live in Karratha at the time of filming, and I had to go to Perth, which is 16 hours drive south, for this operation because they don't do them up here. Okay, so we left Karratha, we flew down. Luckily for us, we have a thing called PATS, Patient Assistance Transfer Scheme, which means if you're more than, I think, 2 hours from the nearest hospital that can do whatever medical procedure you have to have done, they will pay for it. The government, that is. So we had our flights booked through PATS and we got a portion of our accommodation back while we were down there, which is always helpful. Sorry, you burp a lot in the beginning. Plus I'm drinking, so that makes you burp a lot too. Okay, so we flew down the day before my surgery. I had to fast from midnight that night, and which wasn't hard because I wasn't hungry at this point. And I then had to present at the hospital by 6 a.m. because I was first up at 8 a.m. So I had to go in and check in by myself. Ollie couldn't come in with me because of all the restrictions that are still on, etc. So I turn my phone off, sorry. So I went in by myself. Surprisingly, I thought I'd be nervous being on my own, but I was okay. I think by then I was very much, no, this is what's happening. This is my next best option and we'll see what happens. And plus I'd done a whole bunch of kinesiology leading up to this. So if you don't know about kinesiology and you're not in a great headspace, can I highly recommend you do a lot of that kind of work, because that's going to be the difference between you freaking out on the day and having a smooth run like I did, I believe. Anywho, so I wasn't stressed. First up, the gown, the fabulous socks, all of that kind of thing. And then, you know, you have the procession of people coming in asking you over and over again, are you on blood thinners? So they must have had some pretty like big overhauls about the blood thinners thing, because I've never answered that question so many times in my entire life. And I've had a double knee replacement and all kinds of things. So yeah, that was really quite amazing. So by the time I was all ready, and in that little sort of waiting area with all the other patients. So then they wheeled me in at just after 8, I think it was. And my anaesthetist was there, a lovely lady, and who I'd already spoken to on the phone many times. She was fabulous. But she was having trouble finding veins, which is common for me, right? Like, it's not unusual to come out of a blood test thing with 3 holes to 6 holes in my arms. I've had blood taken from between my toes before. I've had it taken from my wrists because it's that hard to find my blood. So she was struggling. She had the ultrasound machine there and was going for it. And then the next thing I knew, I was out. So she must have decided, right, I need to have a really good go here, so I'm going to knock her out. So they knocked me out. And I woke up with 2 IV ports or catheters or whatever they call them. I had one here and I had one here. So that was the one that the IV was attached to, but I had a spare. So I don't know whether they started with that one and then when, oh, that's not working, we have to move across. I'm not sure what happened. I never asked, but I wasn't surprised. And I had bruises. If I've got the pictures, I'll pop them up. I had massive bruises where obviously they had tried to put in these ports somewhere else and didn't work. So that was actually no surprise to me, really. So yeah, I woke up after surgery about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So they must have just been happy to let me sleep. The doctor apparently came in, must have spoken to me, so I must have come to enough for him to be happy. But I have seen with other YouTubers that have had this done, that the sleep thing all day is common. So I don't know what kind of anesthetic they use for that, but I don't normally take all day to wake up from an anesthetic. So yeah, that was really interesting. But that's okay. So when I woke up and I finally came to, the nurse realized, oh, okay, she's with us. So I was lined up 3 little medicine cups. There'll be a photo here somewhere. 3 little medicine cups of water, and these medicine cups take, I think, 30 mils each. So they were half filled, so 15 mils. And my job was to drink that before the end of the night. So this was sort of 4 in the afternoon. And when I drank them quite easily, then enrolled another lot, and then they got filled up. So what I was told was my first aim was 30 mils per hour. So one of those medicine cups per hour. And then once I was able to do that quite easily, they upped it to, okay, you need to now drink 2 of those an hour, so 60 mils an hour. And when that was okay, then they upped it to, my final aim was 120 mils of liquid an hour. So it was fairly clear to me what my goal was, and I love a good goal, so that was good. So the other thing that first day was, when I was ready to go to the toilet, the nurse came with me, because obviously I had all the IVs and everything attached to me. But in the toilet they had like this little bucket thing, and it was to measure my output, and also the first couple of pees afterwards were blue, because they run dye through you. So they were checking that the dye had gone through my digestive system and come out. So what I figure is, because there's a lot of people on there that say they have a swallow test. So I think the dye is actually the alternative to the swallow test. Thank goodness, because I had a swallow test, barium meal or whatever it was, many years ago, 25 years ago, something like that, and I threw it up. So after reading in the forums that a lot of people had this afterwards to check for leaks and everything, I was panicking, because I thought, that ain't going to go well. So I was very happy when the nurse said, oh no, I'm just checking that the dye has come through you, that they test you. So, and I never had the swallow test. So that's, if you're thinking about having to have this swallow test and you're panicking about it, ask your doctor, ask your surgeon if he'll do the dye, because it's obviously an alternative. So it was for me. Anyway, so they kept that little bucket thing in the toilet. You still sat on the toilet and went to the toilet normally. It just kind of sat on the inside of the rim, so that the nurses could keep checking that I was still urinating effectively and appropriate amounts, which I was on an IV drip for 2 days. So I had plenty coming out between that and what I was drinking as well. So that was okay. So looking at my list, so the next morning, the doctor came and said my liver was impeccable, that I must have done an amazing job on pre-op. I've done a video on that, so I'll link that somewhere. And so I was really happy about that, because that was my goal. As I said in the other video, a lot of people think that the goal of the pre-op shake diet is to lose weight, and it's not. It is actually to reduce the fat around the liver and to shrink the liver, so that the surgeon can move it aside to get to your tummy easily. And so I went in with this thought process of, oh, I really want him to see what he's doing. That was my only thought process. I want him to see what he's doing. And that was how it was achieved, was through the pre-op diet. So he even took photos for me, and so I could see how clean and perfect my liver was, which was awesome. I love that kind of thing. You may not, but I do. So, and he was happy with what I'd been drinking the night before. So he said I could go on to nourishing liquids. So this was day 2 in the morning. So I think he came around about 8 o'clock every morning. So they then promptly brought me a tray that included bone broth, which was like the best thing I ever tasted in my life. It was salty and it was beautiful. And because the shakes are all sweet, which I'm not a huge sweet tooth in the first place. So the salty bone broth was just divine. And I knew it was homemade. I'm an ex-cook. I knew. And I said to the lady that brought it, I said, this is made here, isn't it? And she said, oh, yeah, the chefs make it. I'm like, yeah, you can tell. It was so good. So I actually ended up, because it takes so long to drink it and they bring you sort of 200 mils, I actually got hubby to bring up my thermos so that I could pour it in there and sip it as time goes by. So that is something I recommend to take to the hospital with you, is a couple of thermoses so that you can, yeah, sort of keep sipping throughout the day. Otherwise it goes cold and you might like it cold. Sometimes I like it cold, but mostly I liked it warm. So yeah. So I got the bone broth. I got a protein milk thing. I don't drink milk, so I never drank those. I just pushed them aside on my tray. I just wasn't even interested in trying it because it's not my thing. I just cannot stomach the idea of drinking a glass of milk. It's just like, no. So that didn't happen. There was jelly and ice cream, or jello as my American friends would call it. So the jelly went down easily. That was no problem. The ice cream, I was a bit astounded by because of how many people end up with lactose intolerance after it. And as a thyroid person, I tend to avoid dairy anyway. However, I tried it because through this little journey, I'm trying everything, because I'm testing what's going on now. So I've got a whole new stomach. So I'm testing everything. So I had a few bites of the ice cream. It was like, yeah, for me, because ice cream's not my thing. It was all right. It was, okay. It wasn't terrible. And it sat fine. So everything that I had on that second day sat fine with me. I didn't have a problem. I was drinking okay. But what happens then is it becomes this consistent job of drinking drinking, because it's all fluids. And some nurses would come in and they would want to literally see the cups lined up so that they could literally count how many mils of water you're having in an hour. Other nurses didn't care. So it was really kind of like I like very definite parameters and boundaries. And so there was no boundaries or parameters. It was like one nurse was like, no, I want to know. And another nurse was like, oh, that's nice. Like, didn't matter. So from that perspective, I was looking forward to going home, because just to do my own things and to set my own parameters, my own goals. So, but that was okay. They were still Hollywood Private Hospital in Perth, fantastic. Like, I can never fault them. That's where I had my knees done as well. They're amazing. So the nurses and everything, they did a great job. It was just like, everybody's different, right? So gas pains. I didn't have what they consider most people have, is the gas pains. So this is the gas from when they blow up your tummy with CO2 to see what they're doing, for the robot to get in there and see what's doing. And I had actually spoken to my anaesthetist on the phone about this previously. And she actually said to me, no, I suck most of that out. So whatever they do, or whatever she did, she must have sucked it out really well, because the only pain that I had, and if you're unfamiliar with this is not like a gas pain, like, you need to go to the toilet or you need to fart really badly. This is a gas pain that sort of comes up in your chest, apparently, in your shoulders, and makes you feel really scared because you kind of don't know what it is. So I didn't have any chest pain. All I got was a little bit of shoulder pain that sort of came and went, and it wasn't really bad. It just sort of hardly anything, but enough that I knew what it was. So, but for gas, if you do end up with gas, they say walking. So yeah, that's the answer to getting the gas out. So the second day too, so I was having my liquids. So Ollie shows up and it was time for my first walk around the hallways. So I will insert that little bit here, and Ollie is in his usual fine form if you know him. So I'll put that next.
Run. No, you have to run, seriously. Pretend there's a fire. Pretend there's a fire, like.
It's not fun.
Fire, fire, fire. Oh, you're dead.
I am dead.
Okay, so as you can see, these were my walks around every time he came up, which keeps things light and happy, right? So it's all good, and that's my man, right? That's who he is. So on the Monday, so that was Sunday that I went walking. So on the Monday, I was able to have my first shower, and they were having problems by then also. My veins where they had it over here were closing up because that's what they do. And so they moved the IV to over here. Again, they were trying to flush it out, and it was, so painful. It was just shutting down. So they just kind of went, right, it's time to take it out. Because by then I was having all the medication was pretty much by mouth at that point. So I was having an anti-reflux tablet that dissolved in your mouth. I was having an anti-nausea drug of a morning, which dissolved on your tongue. They were down to just giving me Panadol at this point. Baby's Panadol, which was liquid. So sweet. It tasted so sweet. And so they just sort of went, well, let's take out the drip, let's take out the ports or whatever they are. So they did that, and then I was able to have a shower and finally get out of my surgery robe, and that felt so good. It felt so good. So that was awesome. Later that day, I think it was that day, the timelines now I'm getting, it's only a week ago and I'm just okay. So I had my first non-scale victory. So let's have a look at that.
Well, I think I just had my first NSV, as they say, so non-scale victory. And it's doing exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm sitting up in bed. And while some people might think, I don't know about any of you, but if you've got a big belly, sitting up in bed isn't comfortable. Like you have to sort of like put your hand back and hold yourself up or that kind of thing. But I sat up this morning and realised it was comfortable. So that was pretty cool to know that it was actually comfortable to just sit here like this. So woohoo, my first non-scale victory.
So that was exciting. I know that seems weird to some people, but if you've got a tummy like I have, and if you're considering surgery, you do, that's one of those weird little things like crossing your legs and that sort of stuff, right? So it was just this moment of, I've actually made a difference already with the pre-op and where I was at. So that was just, it felt really good to go, okay, something's happening. Something is actually happening. Because remember, I've come into this with lipedema going, I'm still not entirely sure if this is going to work, but let's try anyway. So yeah, so any little things is like, awesome. So Tuesday I was discharged. The doctor was really happy for me to stay. My surgeon was happy for me to stay. Because I live so far away, he was happy to make sure I was absolutely A-okay before I came home. And we were booked in to stay in Perth for 9 days anyway. So on the Tuesday, I was discharged and we weren't flying out till the Sunday anyway. So I felt really good. I was keeping everything down that they gave me. I had no issues. I was peeing easily and good amounts. I was, about 450. I learned that, okay, 450 mils is a good amount for me. each time. And yeah, so everything was going smoothly. So he said, look, if you want to go, you can go. And as I said earlier, because all the nurses had a different, what they expected of me, I was really happy to go at that point and go, yeah, I want to put in my own little routine now. So that's what I did. And so the only thing that I had to do before I left, before I could leave, was to poop. And I hadn't pooped yet. And so the nurse came in afterwards and said, well, you have to poop. She said, how do you feel about enemas? I said, I love them. I talk about them all the time, which if you know me from thyroid school, I do. I talk about them all the time. They're fantastic. And she said, do you want one? I said, absolutely. Let's do it. And it's different to the kind of enema I use. So if you get asked or suggested to do an enema in hospital, go for it. It's this tiny little, I don't know, liquid, almost like because they do suppositories, I think, as well, but this enema must work quicker. And it's the tiniest little amount of liquid in it. It looks like maybe a tablespoon. And they squirt it into your butt and you lay there on the bed till you feel like you need to go to the toilet. You go to the toilet. Bob's your uncle. It works really well. Okay, so that worked and I was able to leave. So that was my surgery story and my time in hospital. I'm going to cut it there, and the next video will be my week, the rest of the week in